Hi everyone, it's Melissa and welcome to another installment of Second Time's the Charm. This is a series I'm doing this year where I am retrying old DNFs and books I previously didn't like to give them another shot now that I am a more, experienced reader. A lot of these I DNF'd or didn't like back in high school or in my early 20s. I am just about to pick up my daughter from daycare and we're going to go to the library, and I am picking up the next book I'm reading, which is Slaughterhouse 5. I have read this many years ago and I didn't get on with it at all. I don't remember a lot about it, but I do know what I didn't like about it. And it was, too weird for me. I think it boils down to I was probably confused. So I don't know how many spoilers I'm going to give in this. I will put in the description box whether this is like a spoiler-free or if it has spoilers. So I remember just not liking, I guess, the science fiction element of it. But I don't know, that might have been me misunderstanding. I think there's probably some ambiguity as to whether or not the science fiction element is real or if it is a product of like mental illness. So I don't know. I just remember reading it and being like, what's the deal with these like time travel bits? What's with the aliens? I mean, I guess that's a mild spoiler that there are like aliens and time travel involved, but maybe that's not really happening. I don't know. I think this book is complex and I think my brain wasn't ready for it at the time. So we're giving it another shot. I'm going to go to the library, pick it up, and get started this weekend. I have finished the first chapter of Slaughterhouse 5, and there's like a framing narrative that I don't remember at all. So in the first chapter, it's told in first person, and I was like, oh, I don't remember that. And also the narrator of the first chapter doesn't seem confused, and I'm like, when are we going to get to the part where he's confused and jumping around in time? But as a framing narrative, so that's not the protagonist. The narrator is a World War II veteran. This is later in his life. He has a family, and he's thinking a lot about kind of like writing this book, or he's trying to write this book about the Second World War, and he's, visiting an old friend and fellow soldier, and he wants to write this book and doesn't really know how to go about it, or he's kind of like lost in how he's going to do this. And it's very, I was going to say like autofiction, but it's not quite to that extent, but it's definitely like an author insert type of thing. Like you can tell that this was how Kurt Vonnegut was feeling about a lot of things and about thinking about his past and the war, and how you try to encapsulate all of these feelings into a book. Now that we're past that framing narrative and we're into the book, where we are following the protagonist, Billy Pilgrim, I had forgotten his name, and how he's navigating life. The first full sentence of the book, past chapter 1, is Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time. Now that we're getting into this section with Billy Pilgrim and the kind of more weird and non-straightforward narrative, this is where I fear I'm going to struggle. Even the first chapter, although it's straightforward and it doesn't have that jumping around in time element that I don't think I got along with when I read this years ago, even though it doesn't have that, it's still very fragmented, and I don't know how I am going to like cope with that through the whole book. I feel like I want to sit in a moment longer. Thinking back when I first read this, I remember the time travel stuff and the kind of like sci-fi elements being the thing that I didn't get on with. But now I'm wondering if maybe it wasn't so much that element, maybe it was more so the whole style of the book and how fragmented it is. And then when you mix in the time travel on top of that, maybe it was just a little bit too cutting scenes back and forth. And yeah, so anyway, those are my long-winded thoughts on the first chapter, and I will check back in with more thoughts later. It's like several weeks later, I think, at this point. I've been really busy and not reading much at all, but I finally have gotten a decent chunk into this book and can share some more thoughts on it. It is a bit weirder than I remember, actually. You are kind of following him reliving moments, not even reliving them, being in that moment. So he will be like a middle-aged man with like adult children, and then he will be back in the war, and he's just jumping around and he has no control over that. One of the events from his life that he mentions is being abducted by a flying saucer in the 60s, and he is whisked off to the planet Tralfamadore, and he learns about like being unstuck in time from the Tralfamadorians because they don't experience time linearly, like all moments are this moment kind of thing. So he has been experiencing being unstuck in time for a while when he is abducted, according to him, by these aliens. But he finally understands now that he is just experiencing time non-linearly, like lots of other beings do. So that's the basic like premise for exploring his life in this non-linear fashion. And obviously this is a book about the Second World War, and I'm sure Kurt Vonnegut is saying a lot of things about kind of that experience. The writing is definitely very fragmented and out of order, and I know that that's intentional. I still don't think, this isn't like bad or anything, and I don't think, to this point at least, I'm not disliking it as much as I had previously, but I don't think this style of storytelling is ever going to work for me, so I'm not loving it. Like, I was hoping that maybe initially when I first read this book, I was just like confused. I don't think I'm actually confused, I think I just don't like that kind of storytelling. Something I had forgotten about this book, or maybe it just didn't resonate the same the first time I read it, is how funny it is. Like, obviously there are some more depressing things in here to do with war, but it's obviously this thing with like the aliens and like Tralfamadore, which is an absurd name. This is an absurd book. It has kind of this absurdist type of humor almost about it. And there's a lot of very kind of I don't know what else to say besides weird, like weird things that happen that are just absurd but funny at the same time. And I really don't remember the book being that funny. I remember it being odd, but I don't remember it being that funny. So I'm at least getting a little bit more of that, like the wit, I guess, out of the writing. So I think overall the reading experience this time is better. I don't think I'm going to end up loving this book or maybe even really liking it, but I think I'll get a lot more out of it this time. finished Slaughterhouse 5, and here are my kind of like final thoughts about it. I think I had mentioned in another clip that I forgot how funny some parts were. It kind of has this absurdist kind of tone to it, but like coupled with this like sense of bleakness, which is an interesting pairing. There's kind of this bleak mindset of the main character that nothing really matters because of his ability to jump around in time. There's this mentality that everything has already happened and everything is happening and everything will happen again, that all of these moments always exist. He doesn't seem that moved by death because those people are alive in other moments in time and therefore are always alive. And I thought there was some interesting kind of commentary there about how everything's already happened, is happening, will happen again, and that being echoed in kind of the thought that war has happened and is happening and will happen again, that we don't seem to learn from those mistakes, and that war, unfortunately, is this thing that just keeps happening over and over again. And so that's what I mean by this kind of like bleak tone that runs throughout, but then it's coupled with these kind of absurd moments that are like a little funny. I don't think Slaughterhouse 5 is ever going to be a favorite of mine because, as I mentioned, like just the style and the jumping around, you don't get like a deep, intimate connection with the main character. And that's something I think I need to really love a book, or it's one of the ways, and is probably one of the more important ways that I really love a book. And you don't really get that. You're kept at a distance, and I think that is obviously intentional, and I think is one of the ways this novel works. Like, the novel doesn't work for me as well as for some other people, but I think the people who enjoy it, who love this novel, I think that's one of the reasons. I think this distance kind of plays into Billy Pilgrim's like experience, his like worldview, I guess, and that he's not going to be a very open, inviting person, that he's going to have this distance there. So like it's intentional and it works. And I think like on the whole, I recognize that this book is very smart. I'm so glad I reread it because I did get a lot more out of it this time, and I certainly appreciate it more. Like I said, it's not a book that's ever going to be a favorite of mine just because like of the style and structure, but I can't deny that it's a really smart book. I can't deny that some of the themes and how the themes are explored are done really well. Kind of exploring the experiences of a World War II vet with this jumping around in time, I think really led to some powerful moments that you wouldn't have gotten necessarily otherwise, or you wouldn't have gotten in the same type of moments. There's one example of a moment, and I don't remember the scene at all, but I found it quite powerful and moving, where Billy Pilgrim is watching television. He's watching like a World War II. Well, I don't actually know which war it is, but he's watching like a war film, and the scene was like so sad. So he's watching this film, but at the same time he's having this like temporal kind of experience, and he ends up watching the movie backwards. Like he's experiencing time backwards. He watches a movie where these planes fly over this desolate city and start sucking up materials, the bombs obviously, but like sucking materials up into the belly of these planes and rejuvenating the city, and the city comes back to life, and then they fly these materials home, and then these workers take the materials and dismantle them, and then they take the raw minerals and metals and carefully plant them back into the earth. And I don't remember the scene at all. And I think the first time I read this book, it was a bit too much for me, this jumping around and the sci-fi element. I just thought was really weird. And I think now, as a more either mature reader or experienced reader, having read different books that maybe have a structure that's not conventional, I was able to, I guess, like, appreciate moments like that more. And while, like I said, this book isn't going to be a favorite of mine, that scene is definitely going to be one that I think about a lot, and will probably go back and reread, maybe not the whole book again, but reread that passage, which I found really powerful. So this was a glowing success for me. I didn't love this book, but I respect it, and I do think it is a great novel, just not a novel that's for me. And I've taken a lot from it, and like, I'm so, so, so glad that I reread it. And I would encourage anyone who hasn't read it to read it. I think it is worth everyone's time. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you've read Slaughterhouse 5, comment below what your experience reading it was like. I would love to have a chat with you about it. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.